All right. Last time on A Crown of Cold Iron, our heroes have successfully returned from their incursion into Fairy. The first trip for two of them, the first return in a while for Auric. Many secrets were revealed. We saw the revelation of. We'll have to decide what to call Bran in relation to Auric. What's your preferred nomenclature there?
I guess past life.
So we saw the revelation of Oric's past life as Bran the Raven King, an ancient, nearly mythological figure of the human realm. We saw the rescue of the ancient Tuathan knight Mort by his protege Cyrus, and a sort of family gathering where secrets were revealed, much of the history of Mort and the Tuatha in Queensborough. And now we turn our eyes to Lexi. We're in sort of a montage period, and so of course you've returned, checked in on the bar, and now you were looking at doing some research.
Yes.
So we said you were going to look into the hero light. What even is it? How does it work?
Mysteries of the world.
And you had some sources in mind. So
Yeah.
how do you want to go about this? Who do you want to talk to?
Excuse me. Um, I think probably I would want to start with the Blackthorns, simply because we've clearly made a connection through. Oh God, this has been a long day. What's your girlfriend's
Vela?
name? Vela.
That's not a weird vibe at all. Uh,
Asking my husband what his fictional girlfriend's name is.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you all have always known that Vela is kind of a big deal. I think maybe recent events are underlining this more and more. When you all were being sort of held by human authorities after you returned from the gate into Fairy, not Argus, sorry, Reginald Blackthorne himself, the head of the Blackthorne clan, probably the most powerful human archmage in existence, came to bail you all out. And by bail, I mean he kind of threatened like federal and local authorities, and also like various levels of ambassadors and diplomatic officials. He threatened all of them with like magical extinction. Not in so many words, but he made his presence known. So Vela is definitely able to get you access. Are you wanting to sort of dig into their archives? Are you looking for a specialist? What's the
Um, Probably I would start with the archives just to kind of get a better understanding of the history, and then maybe looking into a specialist. Yeah, because I think probably Lexi's first question is why me? But understanding why me, kind of, she knows understanding why me has to start with understanding what is it. Um, so I think history is probably where she would start.
so in one of these days after you return, Vela easily sets you up with access. And actually, you discover that basically you've had access at will. Like Vela, I was going to say Vela set it up. Vela didn't set it up. Barnabas set it up, knowing that Vela would potentially eventually ask him to set it up. Oh, and Zoom has frozen.
Recording in progress.
Hi.
Hello.
I don't know why it does that.
Yep.
So anyway, you have access to the Blackthorne Archives.
Yep.
Barnabas set it up in Vela's name,
Okay.
anticipating that eventually you were going to ask for it, and he was trying to sort of like knock off future work ahead of time. So
Sorry,
you
man.
discover that it's already been set up. Um, I think maybe the way you discover this is like you send like an email to Vela, and it's Barnabas who replies, and you discover that like while Vela can use email and does use email, her actual like work email she like doesn't do any of. It's only
Mhm.
Barnabas, and so he informs you on her behalf that it has already been set up for you.
Okay.
So you are able to hop into Pokey and make your way over to the Blackthorne Academy with their extensive archives.
Yes.
We've already mentioned this with Oryx delving on occasion. The Blackthorne Archives, the library there, is extensive. There are a lot of basic texts. There's some sort of general information kinds of resources. There's basic magical texts, but the real wealth of the archive is magical and historical documents going back thousands of years. Not only did the Blackthorns preserve this better than just about anybody, but also over the centuries, they went out of their way to hunt this stuff down when no one else cared about it.
Hmm.
Everyone else was like, these are fairy tales. This is a book of magic that doesn't work. And the Blackthorns were like, yeah, yeah,
Sure.
it's a novelty item. And bought like powerful books of magic while no one cared about them.
Kind of like finding that trying to think some analogy, but basically finding the really rare baseball card. The person selling it has no
Yeah.
clue that it's rare.
I was gonna say it's someone's mom selling their Pokemon, their first edition Pokemon cards on Facebook.
Yeah. Or selling the Atari for $5 at a
Yes.
yard sale. Yep.
So the Blackthorns did a very good job of that. They also made copies of a lot of things and have preserved them over time.
Hmm.
You are not allowed into just sort of anything you want because there is so much material and some of it is super dangerous
Yeah.
or sort of Blackthorn classified. But
Right.
essentially, you are set up with a like research assistant, not necessarily to like hover over your shoulder the whole time, but
Right.
when you
Guide
arrive,
me in the right way.
yeah, and it's a this feels fitting for Lexi. It is one of the pit fighters, one of the wannabe pit fighters that you saw under Banner and Norton's. And give me just a second because I think they have names.
These are the same ones that Auric did the like eye thing to.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I am 99% sure they have names in my list of Blackthorns. Let's see. Nope, went too far. I believe that I decided those were Zint and Maythew. So this is
Okay.
this is Maythew.
Maythew.
Yep. We're playing by George R. R. Martin rules here, which is take a normal name and change the consonants.
There you go.
Makes it fantasy. So Maythew is not a huge guy by Lexi standards, but in a building full of wizards, he sticks out. He probably has like twice the muscle mass of pretty much anyone except maybe like enhancement specialist wizards, transmutation folks who mess around with body magic. But he is surprisingly like low key and polite, perhaps because he has been. He's like scared of Vela, but he's scared of Vela like a super volcano exploding. Like he knows it's a possibility, but it's not an everyday concern. He's afraid of Barnabas, like knowing that you owe somebody money and it's been a while since you made a payment. He's that kind of afraid of Barnabas, which means he's going to do a very good job for you. So he goes and starts pulling resources on the hero light. So the first thing you encounter is that there are a surprising there's a surprising amount of information. This is not a this is not like a narrow specialized thing. When you get to documents written pre-sundering, they talk about Hero Light like it is an accepted and well-known aspect of the world. Hero Light was something that was widespread. And specifically, it was something that you recognize a strange class of people for which there is not really a modern equivalent. They're not police because they're not primarily concerned with crime or public order, and they're not necessarily like hunters who are essentially trying to come up with food or some other resource. There seems to be a widespread career, a vocation of monster hunting. And of course, there is some profit made, but generally the idea seems to be that monsters were something that happened. And they use the term very liberally. You see descriptions of things that just seem like fantasy, which has become a weird category. Fighting wolves the size of a house, or a griffin, or you see descriptions of things that sound like dragons. And so it seems like there was just this class of people who seem to have this supernatural strength and endurance.
So to put it in real world, but to compare it to other things, that other literature that exists, what comes to mind for me is hunters and huntresses from Ruby.
Yeah.
Okay. So similar to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are, and historically, just to give you sort of the time frame, most of the resources come pre-sundering.
Yeah.
They're like 500 and earlier.
Okay.
Stretching back into like pre-Arlen history. And it does get a little confusing because the calendar standards are not very standard.
Right.
Because of sort of how the immediately pre-sundering and post-sundering world developed, the Arlen counting of years kind of became standard. But before that, there was all kinds of different benchmarks for time. There was, in the year of King such and such, 10 years after the blasted drought, strange things like that. But Maythew actually does a very good job of kind of chronologically sorting these for you. Yeah, they just took Hero Light as a given. it was something that it just seemed to show up everywhere for a while. Let's go ahead and get some kind. We're going to call this a history check with advantage.
Okay.
There's still a ton more information here. It's really more about sifting out what's relevant.
I rolled an 18 on both.
All right. I think maybe this is sort of an academic flourishing that maybe even Lexi wasn't aware of in herself.
When
Lexi.
Lexi's interested in the topic.
Yes. And up to this point, there's just not been that many things not many academic things you were this invested in. But you are able to really dig in, and so pre-sundering, hero light is everywhere. After the sundering, it disappears very quickly. Which leads you to an interesting resource that was written by a Blackthorne about 100 years after the sundering. And it's a very simple title. It's just something like On the Nature of Hero Light. And for saying that, he doesn't actually know what it is. But the theory that the book runs on is that hero light seems to be a responsive power. Hero light seems to have some kind of guiding principle to it in a way that other forces don't. Sorcery, sort of wizardry, divine magic, druidic magic, all these other sort of forms of power have their own internal logic that doesn't really change. Like, the power sources can wax and wane, but if you have the right bloodline and the magic is available, you will be a sorcerer.
Mm-hmm.
Hero Light was strange because it almost had a tendency to show up in ways that were too convenient. Like, sometimes Hero Light would pass down through families. But also, sometimes, a peaceful village in the middle of nowhere would have no one with Hero Light for generations. And then approximately the same time period, either just before or just after, and sometimes even during an attack from some non-human source, someone would suddenly develop this power. You find legends of like woodcutters who thought they were making sort of last stands to defend their family and their village, and instead their axe cleaves clean through the wyvern or something. Things that, if it was narrative, it would feel maybe a little too pat.
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. But the author seems to think there might be something to that, because the power disappeared almost overnight. Like, the second that everything split apart, 95% of Hero Light vanished from the world. And of that last 5%, as other sources of power dwindled, they fell to match. There's some annotation from you can see where this book has been pulled recently. And it looks like some kind of maybe like graduate researcher or something has pulled this out, and has written an article about it, using it as a source, comparing it, or at least asking questions about why Hero Light seems to be on the uptick. And this is noticeable because 6 months ago or so, when all this started, you had never seen or heard of anyone else having this ability. And even yours was basically almost brand new. But in that span of time, you've started to see more and more people showing up with this ability. You remember in the Fight Club underneath Banner and Norton's, like all the human fighters seem to have some of it, and some like Tyler and Shane Allowan seem to have a lot of it. And at least for the Blackthorns, it's becoming common knowledge that this is in the world again. And so this essayist has gone back basically to say there might be something to this. It went away when there was nothing to protect humanity from other than itself. And as soon as there are new threats on the board, it has started to reappear very rapidly.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'll just say, what other questions do you have? We're going to let your 18 ride.
Oh gosh. I guess then kind of, because Lexi's question was kind of why me? And, and now it seems almost kind of random. Like it's not necessarily a genetics or anything like that. Cat distracted me. But thinking of, I guess, trying to figure out, because you talked about like the class of people that were monster hunters essentially. But clearly it affects some people and it doesn't affect others, although it seems that anybody can have it if the need is there.
So
Is that what I'm understanding?
a trend that you pull out with the research, there's some correlation with Hero Light appearing for folks who were already strong or skilled. There was even a sense that maybe you could intentionally pursue Hero Light.
Okay.
But the most overwhelming factor you see comparing all these different accounts, there seems to be a strong correlation with people who have something to protect. This seems common. Like Hero Light was often associated with like knights,
Right. Yeah.
very specifically people who weren't just like warriors for fighting's sake, but people who protected things. And that sort of tracks with stories of folks who sort of developed it spontaneously. It was usually not someone who was carving through a battlefield against other humans. It was
Right.
someone who was backed into a corner by a supernatural threat with
Yeah.
something behind them.
Yeah.
So there does seem to be some correlation there of Lexi's life up to that point might have in some way shaped her into a vessel that is fitting for Hero Light. But you also know Luz is somehow part of this story.
Yeah.
And I think we can say that Auric and Cyrus, you've probably shared the things you all have learned. We'll situate this chronologically third, since that makes sense. Cyrus and Mort and sort of the Mort family dinner was like immediate. Oryx thing took a couple of days to set up. So this is maybe like a week and a half, 2 weeks later.
Mhm.
So things you gathered from them, the bits and pieces of what you understood was that Hero Light seemed to be something that was created intentionally. It's not a natural force per se.
Mhm.
You also gather that it was a collaborative effort. It was not just like one power source. It wasn't just like an angel did it. It was a human prince, probably more like a chieftain in that period. You get the impression that the Morrigan was involved. They probably would refer to her as a pseudonym, maybe something like the Phantom Queen or the Queen of Ravens. And you also get the impression that, even though I used it as an example, there really was an angel involved. It seems like a strange combination of powers was brought together. And from what you heard secondhand from Mort through Cyrus, is that maybe all of them didn't have the same priorities. And maybe that somehow is relevant in the long term.
That they didn't have the same priorities.
Right.
Okay.
The I would say maybe Mort filled in a few more details, essentially combining it with Oryx recollections. The Morrigan seemed to have maybe somewhat malicious intent. She wanted something that was going to wreak havoc for the Fae. The human involved wanted something that would allow him to reclaim his kingdom, to retake his territory from supernatural powers. The angel seemed to genuinely want to give humanity a fighting chance. With an 18, this is going to be some galaxy brain level research and maybe some luck. Give me another history check with advantage here
Okay.
to see if you can pull something specific out.
18 again.
All right.
The 9. So, we're just rolling in that like multiplier.
All right. So you find this combination. These are the ones that are traditionally listed: the Morrigan, the Prince, and the Angel. But dancing around the edges of these stories, sometimes you get the indications that they were not alone. Each of them brought something. These sort of complementary powers that would be blended together to make Hero Light. The angel brought this element of protection and sort of earnest. How do I put it? A power that would favor those in earnest need. The prince wanted something that would grant strength, that would make someone a champion, someone who could be victorious. And the Morrigan wanted something that would equip humans to defeat supernatural powers, very specifically. But sometimes you catch other figures, and one shows up more than others. And when I say figures, it's literally illustrations. There are sometimes like crude, sort of like marginalia, illuminated little bits and things here and there.
Like a lot of other ancient works.
Yeah. Well, and remember, the Blackthorns had like 13 or 1400 years with no magic.
Right.
They had a lot of time to work on craft projects.
This was somebody's artistic weekend or something like that.
Yeah, someone like hand compiling these resources, essentially Blackthorns as monks, basically,
Yeah.
true monastics. In the background, sort of like a crowd shot, like Angel, Morgan, Prince, front row. In the back, almost obscured by the other three, you see like the hint of a head and the point of a spear. And you also see there's these sort of like lines drawn coming off of this figure in the back. And they look very similar to what comes off of the angel in the same illustration. There is an implication of streaming light. There is a fourth figure who doesn't ever seem to get named. But you see those two factors over and over, the spear and the light. And just as a reminder, who told you all? Somebody told you that. Maybe it was Mort talking to Cyrus on why lose is important. Was that part of that conversation?
Yeah, I think it
I
was.
think so.
It's the only thing I can think of who would have told you that recently. Lose is somehow part of this.
Yeah. I was thinking that. I was like, all right, how is Luz part of this?
Yeah, I was like, you all already got that information. I'm going to go ahead and just throw it back out so that you're ready for your next question.
Yeah. So you see the angel and the priest, the chieftain, they were all sitting around Luz
Yeah, so lose
having a
is
drink.
a significant site of power.
Yeah.
And it's a place that has so much significance that it is a little bit alive in its own right. There is you encountered a more intentionally cultivated version of that at the Fey Embassy. The embassy had an intentionally cultivated sort of spirit of the place. Luz seems to have developed on its own. So, in some sense, it is an embodiment, something of a caretaker, but also not. It's still a place. It's not a. It's not a hyper intelligent thing.
Right.
If we were to put a number on it, like lose is at like a 5 out of 20.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's higher than I thought, but out of 20, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, D&D number 5 out of 20.
Dang.
Lose is about the intelligence of like a really smart bear. Or a dog, you know.
Yeah.
It understands some things. It has certain impulses and understandings of the world, but it is not a thinker. It is not Zordon in a tube summoning the Rangers, calling for teenagers with attitude. But as you circle around that question of why me, these pieces start to come together. Lose is important. Your history and your background and your personality are important. And the things that your power has been needed for, the things that it's pulled you into, are things that needed doing in some cosmic sense. Because if you think about what you've been pulled into, you've been protecting either occasionally lose itself in the example of Cawthorne Allen Taryn Smith, but
Right.
far more often you've been summoned to protect humans.
Right.
Right from the very beginning, fairies wreaking havoc at the Kent building, and there's Lexi.
Yeah.
Fiends in the Hall of Light, and there's Lexi. Kobolds and spirits at the brewery. Human children carried away into fairy. Over and over again, you've been roped into these things. And of course, then this same power helped the three of you to slay an archfey dragon lord who was, whether he intended to or not, certainly putting human children in not great situations.
Right.
So you see how these things kind of fit together. So pretty sure I know some of the answer to this, but let's. Yep, very little information. Let's take a minute, and we're going to fill in some gaps on a character who has been lurking in the background in some important ways the whole campaign we have never really detailed. So Lexi, tell us a little bit more about Lou.
Okay. So Lou was the previous owner, who, and the bar, like, yes, he was named Lou. The bar was called Lou's way before Lou was there. Like, it was almost kind of like more of a serendipitous that that's why Lou ended up with the bar. Of course, we know the building is smart enough to nudge owners in directions of the next owner. Um, like a dog, it picks its people. Um, but so Lou was the owner, and I've always kind of pictured him as like this wizened old man, like where you can't really tell how old he is because he's just always looked old almost. Um, who was in some ways unassuming, but could kick your ass if you needed to. You know, I almost kind of think of like how people kind of like in some ways deify Stan Lee, like, he's this little unassuming old man, but at the same time, like, could sock you in the jaw kind of thing. Like, um, and so Lexi and Lou's relationship began, they met when Lexi was fresh into adulthood, essentially, um finding her place in the world. And and I'm trying to now come up with what I remember of Lexi's backstory without having to go look up where I wrote it down.
So
But Lexi,
probably you've mentioned that she did probably some tours of military service.
yeah,
And I think we zeroed it in that that had probably something to do with like embassy guards.
yeah, yeah. And so it was kind of after that when she was trying to figure out what she wanted to do next, that Lou kind of took her under his wing. I mean, she was a girl who could fight. This was probably like in the heydays of Lexi's like Fight Club lifestyle. Um, Probably prompted by Tyler. Let's be real here. And obviously girlfriend needed a paycheck to get to, stay alive. So Luz is kind of where she ended up, really more just like at the bottom of the, you know, like the dishwasher bouncer person, the person who is 100% behind the scenes, except when something needs to be, you know, except when the trash needs to be taken out, both kinds. um, but he was a mentor to her, a father figure in many ways. I think I even wrote in Lexi's like backstory that her dad died when she was like 15 or so in like a steel working or iron working accident or something like that. Probably iron working. It was an industry accident, factory accident. And so he kind of became a dad to her in many ways and kind of helped her have a place to kind of land her feet while she figured out what she wanted to do with her life. And in many ways, Lexi was one of those people who really didn't know what she wanted to do with her life. And so she just kind of stayed where she was. But in the meantime, he helped her to find a steady place. And, she then started taking business courses at his recommendation. Basically, he was pushing her the entire time you know, as the place does, for her to be ready to take over when he was ready to step back and retire. And so that's kind of it in a nutshell. But, mentor father figure who, guided her to where she is now.
So, a follow up question. Um, so, uh, so Lou retires, leaves the bar to Lexi.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I at least have a note that Lou is deceased.
Yes, yes.
So how does Lou pass?
In thinking about it, I'm not even sure that Lou actually does retire.
Mm-hmm.
That Lexi was, that was always his intention, was to leave the bar to Lexi, whether that was through him retiring and going off on some crazy trip around the world, or whether that was because he died with his boots on.
So maybe he was trying to sort of like he was starting to kind of phase out, let Lexi take more and more of the reins, but
Yeah,
didn't quite get to finish the process before he passed.
yeah. And in terms of passing, never really thought of it as being something violent. Knowing Lou, it would have probably been, if it was anything that was like an actual accident and not just dying in his sleep, it would have been a very hilarious way to go out. Um, you know, not anything, I don't know. I'm trying to think of what would be a funny way to go out, but just
Falling piano.
falling piano, what if there's like, hey, watch this, hold my beer kind of moments, but having the time of his life while he did it kind of thing. But honestly, I think he probably just like passed in his sleep.
So something sticks out as you're doing this research. Um, you discover maybe this is worrisome. The Blackthorns definitely have a file on Luz, and like they're not like hiding this from you, but it's sort of they have resources that identify Luz as important. The location, it was important thousands of years ago.
Right.
And recently, they have figured out that it is important now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you find some effort to try and piece together everything in between. And so you find this record, a lot of which you've seen both on your own and also in digging through the Cawthorne, Allen, Tarr, and Smith documents. Um, so you see the sort of sequence of ownership, of institutions, of all the different things that were on that site over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And something sticks out. They've dredged up some old photos. There were a handful of times that Luz like shows up in the newspaper, and never for like anything too dramatic. They're sort of like fluff pieces, like you know, and a lot of them have really incorrect dates. It's like 200 years later, you know, I'm trying to think of different names. 200 years later, Lewis's Tavern is still up and kicking, serving the residents of Queensboro. Reporter so and so went to interview Lewis, and then it's like, you know, Lewis such and such the fifth or something.
Yeah.
So we've mentioned before, Hero Light, amongst several other powers, seems to be particularly good at piercing through glamour. Each of you has always had sort of your own way of being able to see through a ring of seeming. And it's become more intense as your power has increased. And you notice a detail that at first your eyes almost try to slip past it. Like something about it encourages you not to look at it. And Lexi wouldn't see this, but maybe a nosy Barnabas discreetly watching you from like an upper balcony might notice as you stare at this collection of articles and pictures and things spread out in front of you, and your eyes flicker and spark white as you look these over. And your head hurts for just a second. Almost like a migraine trying to set in, and then it passes. And a detail across the pictures suddenly stands out. You see the same individual showing up in these pictures over and over again. And it's not always a person in the foreground. Sometimes it's a patron. Sometimes it's someone just sort of passing by, theoretically. And like the clothing changes and the style changes. But this person shows up over and over. And what makes it strange is that this person shows up sometimes separated by 100 years and looking basically the same. It's a shorter man. Almost all of these pictures are black and white. It's a shorter man with curly hair. In the picture, it's hard to tell if it's not like dark, but it's hard to tell exactly what color. And always seems to have the same walking stick. And they show up in probably 10 different pictures. Give me a charisma saving throw with advantage.
Move the screen around so I can get to where my charisma saving throws are. Charisma saving throw with advantage?
Yes.
Oh, I got got a nat 20. So 21.
That feels worthy of what you're about to hear.
Yes.
So, as you look through the older pictures, you realize that there is a glamour very much in the same style as a Ring of Seeming.
Okay.
There is this other image of a person laid over them, and the person is not always the same.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a woman. Sometimes it's people of different nationalities and backgrounds, and even different, like, sometimes it's like a little kid, or it's an old lady, or but you're looking at probably like 5 or 6 pictures back in the stack. So there's a few more recent pictures. It looks like they were aware of Cawthorne, Allen, Tarr, and Smith, and maybe the Blackthorns were keeping an eye on Luz because of that.
Yeah.
So you see some pictures of you in the bar that are maybe pulled from, like, the website or something.
Right.
You find pictures of there's a couple of pictures of Argus going in and out. Not Argus. Show me my Blackthorns.
I was gonna say the one who would come to the bar.
Not Argus. Archie.
Archie.
Argus is probably in the background of that picture. But it shows Archie coming and going a lot. That was apparently a cause for interest. And it looks like they pulled a picture, maybe one that was like taken in the bar. It looks like maybe it was pulled off Facebook or something equivalent. Because it looks a little posed. It's like Archie and Argus, like, we're sitting and talking and drinking. You're standing just behind the bar, and someone takes a picture of the three of you. In the background of this picture, that is probably only maybe a year old, that person is there again. But that's not the point of interest, really. Because you flip through a few more pictures, and you find one that is... This gets back into, like, Polaroids.
Oh, man. The first time.
And it looks like this was maybe, again, kind of like a candid picture, like a patron took. And it's a picture that you probably have a copy of. And it shows a bright-eyed young Lexi, not long out of her time in the military, before the business classes, still mostly just dishwashing and occasionally throwing a drunk out the door. And it would be awkward if there wasn't sort of a natural chemistry there. But, sort of got your arm around this tiny sort of older gentleman who is sort of beaming with joy and pride. And it's sort of a casual shot, like, again, like you were maybe ambushed while you were talking about something, and Lou probably told some awful joke or something and got both of you laughing out loud. And as you look at that picture, that pressure that you're feeling hits its peak. And you feel Barnabas up in the gallery sort of looking down. Your eyes go full white. And it's like it's trying to drill through something. And you feel this layer of glamour break. And the person that you are standing next to is not a small, wizened old man. It is a curly-haired figure, laughing with the most sort of brilliant smile you've ever seen. Yeah.
Okay.
I think we want to put a pin in that for now. What else is on people's agenda? We're working through this like 3 to 6 month window. There are some things kind of happening in the background that I will pepper in as we go. One that Auric already saw, incidentally, was that it seems like Nalt Manfer is running for office.
Right.
And it seems like Marcus Prim and Shane Allowen are somewhere on his campaign staff.
So we need to work on a smear campaign.
Well, there's certainly some questions, because as far as you know, both of them are dead.
Yeah.
So
A
what
lot of
else
thought
is
that
on
ran through
folks?
my head whenever I said, "Well, good for him."
So what else is on people's agendas? Are there people you want to check in on? Are there other things you want to pursue?
The old castle. Is it like still something you can do tours of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Not sure I want to try going in through the sewers again, but
Let's go through the actual part that's open to the public.
yeah.
What a novel concept.
This might be an interesting occasion. Oh, this is just too perfect. We just have to do it this way. You mentioned that you want to meet with Mort at some point.
I think I did, yeah.
And I think the two of you touring the Raven King's palace is just too perfect.
Yes.
I don't know if this was a I don't know if this lead was for the previous arc and so isn't relevant anymore, but to my knowledge, we never found the person that we were looking. There was a person in Lady Bryn's memory
Uh
who
huh.
was shielded that we went looking for and we went to the fight club when we ran into Argent and Stoltis looking for them.
Yeah.
And we didn't find that person, and I don't think we found any more leads on them.
Yeah, that person seems quite important.
Okay.
I'm actually going to. We're gonna have a high stakes history check
Uh-oh.
from Auric.
Yeah, I kind of figured since I'm the one who has new memories.
And that's true too. Anything you want to know that you think Bran would have known, just let me know. We won't do a literal memory palace every time.
And so just flat history roll, no advantage, disadvantage.
Nope. This is high stakes.
So we have to back.
I rolled a 6.
So here's what I'll say instead. What is some just like random thing Auric would want to know about Bran?
A random thing you'll want to know about Bran?
Yeah.
What was his favorite color? What was his favorite food?
I think that we're going to continue in our sad boy cinnamon roll vibe for Bran. Bran felt like he was not allowed to have a favorite color
Oh.
because very early he sort of established this persona, this figure of the Raven King, literally from the time that he's like a teenager. He takes over the crown too early, too young, and has to become this sort of like commander and general, and like he was always worried that, if he was like wearing something like summery and yellow around the castle, that it would like somehow hurt the morale. What food? I don't know. What would I think you can just pull this out. What would his favorite food have been?
He told everybody that his favorite food was gruel, but he actually really loved stone fruits.
I think that might have actually been a secret bond that he shared with Mort and the Blackthorn. That like it wasn't something that he like just had out, but because they both had access to sort of the outside world in a way that he didn't necessarily feel like he had, it just sort of became a thing that they would do of like the Blackthorn would just like conjure them and put them on his desk. Or after Mort gave a briefing with every trace of seriousness, no nonsense, he would walk out and there would just be like a fruit somewhere, like in and around in a place that like there's no way he could have snuck it out of a pocket and put it up there, but nevertheless there it was. So that is what you remember, but this larger piece does not connect for you. So you do know still,
in the memory palace.
yeah, there was this thing in Bryn's memory, this vision of an incident that occurred a few months prior to you all sort of coming together. There was some kind of fey something in a lake in town that was like luring and draining the life out of children. And somehow it seemed like maybe the Kate C was involved, but someone that she can't quite remember seemed to kind of flare up out of nowhere and like smack the Kate C off this plane of existence, mess with everyone's memories, and then disappear. So do we want to go to the Raven Palace now?
I need a moment to remember what I wanted to talk to Mort about.
Well, and we did establish this. Mort has been kind of keeping it like Mort really wants to talk to you, and is maybe like bugging Cyrus about it in like a very low key way, like trying not to like overplay how important this is to him. But we can sit on that for a minute while you ponder. So what else is on people's lists? You might also think of the NPCs in your lives. If there are any sort of scenes you want to do with folks, any places you want to go. Could do another family dinner. We could talk about Cyrus's cousin Nell, who's in college now. What's on the agenda?
Do some sparring with some of the lower level students.
Yeah.
I think I've reached the point where I'm a punishment for them.
You're becoming a little bit infamous. I think maybe something that you have recognized in yourself that maybe it started, not maybe, it definitely has been happening for a while. Like, you felt this sort of growing something. Um, but you have gotten, like, scary with magic a little bit. Like, um, the power is the same, but you're finding that you have just little adjustments of technique and sort of tactics that now you know where they're coming from. Your mind is integrating this decade of sort of combat magic experience, and so the students are treating you a little bit like a celebrity. Like, they don't want to have to fight you, but they love watching someone else fight you. And Vela is actually a little frustrated because there is a it lives right in that place between recklessness and skill. Like, instead of throwing up a shield and blocking a firebolt spell, just like dodging it by like a hair's breadth, but with like perfect control, but in a way that is terrifying for someone who is watching. I think the pit fighters especially are really excited. Maybe you actually get to bust out your what was it called? Your flame kissed wand, and do a little bit of like melee sparring with the pit fighters, which you still do a pretty good job with. So what else? Cyrus, is there a particular lead you want to follow up on? The immediate context of the Fight Club kind of went a little off the rails, but it's possible some of those folks might still have leads.
Yeah. Cyrus wants to find all the people. This is the problem.
Well, you got 6 months, so like
Okay.
this is a good time to sort of figure out all the plot threads you want to pull and just start pulling them.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, like Tyler, Banner, Maine, they're all easy to get a hold of. You could check back in with Lady Bryn. It's been a little bit, and she might have recalled a little bit more. I think there might also just be some like information gathering. I don't know if you all recall this. You all have been hearing rumors about this person for a long time. This was actually like one of the very first interludes. One of the things that was put before little tidbits that was thrown out for Lexi was a mysterious figure has been showing up, clearing house at these fight clubs, and then disappearing.
Yeah.
So there is a rumor trail as well.
Yeah. So I think Cyrus would probably think it would probably like, yeah, would probably follow up with Tyler. That's Tyler and Banner are easy enough people to like ask about just ask about cool fighters and
Yep.
just kind of let them go and not clue in why he's asking. Um and then gonna want to, I think, uh, in terms of conversations, I think Cyrus would do a like family connection with his mom to get hooked up with the university archivist, because we talked that might be a way to sell off some of the random stuff we've picked up. Um, do some more research into Shane Allen. And then I think the big one is it's been long enough, and now that we got some downtime, Cyrus wants to shake the Alan Blake tree again. And so that's probably going to be a more pointed conversation with either the Blackthorns or Lady Bren first. I think probably the Blackthorns, and then potentially going to the embassy.
All right. So you said Blackthorns first?
Yeah.
Okay. So as you sort of pursue this with the Blackthorns, give me an investigation check. This is just a generalized, like, see if you can figure out who to talk to and what to ask about kind of thing. With a 13. So it's easy to pull some of the information that you've received in the past, obviously. You know that Alan Blake was a promising student. Basically, he was gifted in the wrong things. He was not gifted in what he wanted to be gifted in. His skill was more in conjuration magic, in enchantment, in illusion. And all he really wanted was to be an evoker. Evokers are sort of the Blackthorne unofficial rock stars. Vela, who is sort of widely considered a strong candidate for, like, maybe not the next leader, but the one after that. And the current leader both came out of the evocation wing. They were sort of the people who ran it. So Blake ended up sort of burning out trying to get into the evocation track, very disillusioned, very pissed off, basically like took his ball and went home. Except, you all know, somehow, he ended up in possession of the iron rod and the this sort of living tome of magic. Using them, he was able to commit sort of small crimes, stealing what he thought would help him to continue to advance as a wizard. Slowly, it was turning him into a living portal to fairy. You all put a stop to it. Then you left him with Cyrus's dad, which did not end well because Alan woke up and escaped.
Yep.
And since you have not been able to find him. So you get a lot of the same sort of info of, like, you know, very gifted, but very troubled, et cetera, et cetera. I think you don't find necessarily things that are of immediate relevance to Blake with the Blackthorns, but in the process, you start kind of pulling other pieces, other things of import that are happening. You know, the Blackthorns are still under investigation because of what happened. Because specifically, Blake was targeting secret caches of arcane materials, which the Blackthorns were not supposed to be doing. That was part of some early, like, regulation of arcana by human authorities. Was everything has to be above board, has to be registered. They have to know sort of what's out there. So Blake's efforts accidentally revealed sort of to the world that the Blackthorns were hiding a bunch of this stuff. And not just like in a few places, but a lot of places. So there is this ongoing investigation now. And it's not like, it's one of those things where probably nobody's going to go to jail. But it is one of those things where probably there is going to be a hefty fine. There might be like institutional regulations and restrictions placed on the Blackthorns. They are still taking a beating in certain media circles. Some of the sort of pundits they've made it their like nothing else going on topic. They circle back around to like those unregulated crackpot wizards just doing whatever they want. There is a tension that is growing. And you piece this together in a way that maybe someone else wouldn't. This tension is not generic, I would say. There is a factionalism happening amongst the Blackthorns. And it's part of how you're able to find out all this info. Like, people are seemingly all too glad to talk about. You basically find there are some people who are really excited to tell you all the dirty details about this, and some folks who are very tight-lipped. And basically you parse out the tight-lipped people are Reginald's people. Because he is the face of the Blackthorns. And if the Blackthorne family as a whole, as an institution, is in trouble, he's in trouble. The ones who are a little more excited about it seem like maybe they don't talk about it audibly, but they seem to think that there might be a way to sort of break Reginald's stranglehold on power in the Blackthorne family. So I've given random info. Are there specific things that Cyrus would want to poke at with the Blackthorns?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how Cyrus would go about it, but he essentially wants to know, like, do they have the means to make Blake disappear? Has that happened? Have things like that happened before?
Overwhelming yes and yes. Like, Blackthorne politics recently has been almost squeaky clean compared to where it's been at points in the past. Like, they've gone like real skull and bone secret society when they were more sort of underground. So there has been sort of like recent efforts to get more reputable, basically. And mostly those have been going very well, except recently.
I guess here would be one of Cyrus's things. Like, obviously, the Blackthorns have like the monetary means to generally make somebody disappear. They've got the magical means to make somebody disappear. But who in the Blackthorne family understands modern tech well enough to make him disappear in that sphere? And does Cyrus think they've got the people, or would they have to hire out for that? Because I think Cyrus would determine, like, anybody that he's suspicious of doing this has got the magical means. So who knows how to make him disappear from a modern tech perspective?
Give me a technology check. We haven't done one of those in a while. Oh, and I will look and see what that check is instead of just there we go, 25. All right. So you sort of rack your brain. This is the kind of thing that Cyrus just knows. This is part of your job. Absolutely, there are. Absolutely, there are in-house technology experts who are pretty high quality. The Blackthorns are a modern institution. Like they have magic, they have you know musty books and all that stuff, but they are they're not they're not like a fairy picking up a phone for the first time and being like, what is this? They're gonna have real like top notch technology folks, and would definitely be able to hire out as well. That being said, getting around Jace is not easy. There's an extra level of this. So, with that technology check, you take these threads, the monetary, the magical, and the technological. Jace is very high in the technological list. There are very few folks who can outpace him. It occurs to you that maybe the way that they have made someone has made Blake drop off the grid is by actually removing him from the space. And maybe this is colored somewhat by your own recent excursion, but it occurs to you that there might be other places to hide a person from humans that would be way more effective than a physical safe house somewhere in the world.
Okay.
There's another piece that you pick up that I don't want to forget to tell you. You're specifically asking about Alan Blake, and a lot of folks don't have anything to add per se. But the folks who don't like Reginald, there's a couple of folks who kind of, maybe a little too eagerly, are like, they don't seem to know where Blake is, but there's an attitude of like, oh man, if someone could turn him up, it would be a real embarrassment for Reginald, who A, has been trying to find him, and B, he would be a focal point for a lot of the concerns people are raising about Reginald. So we'll keep pulling at this, and some of these things are not necessarily going to happen in perfect chronological order. But in the interest of sending us out on something interesting, it's an indeterminate amount of time after you all have returned to the city. Less than 6 months, more than 6 weeks, somewhere in that span. There is a kid who maybe looks like he's about 14 or 15. And he is walking through the city with two very noticeable things. The most tourist, like everything about him just screams tourist energy. He's just like gawking at everything, staring at the buildings, the people, the clothes, the cars, everything, just to a wild amount, to a wild degree. And, you know, Queensboro is a large city. There are folks who might take advantage of such a person. What dissuades them is the massive dog that is walking with this teenager. And this kid is gawking, and he's got an I Heart the Borough, but it doesn't say the borough. It's I Heart, and then like a little cartoon like skyline of the city. He's got a hat. He's got sort of long blonde hair tucked in a ponytail through the hat. Is looking around, and this dog comes up to like his waist. Seems to be probably 2.5 feet across, like at the shoulders. And so people are giving him a wide berth. Occasionally, he's got like a hot dog from a street cart. He takes a couple of bites and then throws like, again, just like smears like ketchup and mustard and relish all over his face. Just laughs outrageously, every sign of enjoyment, and throws 2/3 of it to the dog, and the dog just, and it like this giant mouth. It's like a little treat by the time it goes into this mouth. But from our perspective, we can also see that a couple of Queensboro's finest have been sort of tailing him and trying to work up the courage to go approach this kid who seems like they're going to get in trouble. There's this back and forth of like, no, you do it. No, you know I don't like dogs. Look at it. That thing's massive. Look, this is we gotta do this. All right, rock, paper, scissors. Fine. And one of the officers sort of steps ahead and is like, excuse me, young man, are you by yourself? And the kid's like, still sort of mouthful of hot dogs, like, the dog like checks him with his shoulder, and the kid's like, look, young man, where are your parents? Around? You know that's not a good enough answer. Look, let's find somebody. You really shouldn't be like, you know, roaming around in certain parts of town by yourself. And the kid is like, I mean, I'm fine. I don't think anything would. Grab a name real quick. And this figure is like not taking no for an answer. The officer's like, look, just come on, you're not in trouble. We just gotta. And the dog looks up at him and says, "We gotta go," and they flicker and disappear. So we will come back next week, continuing to in our sort of montage season. If you think of any follow-up questions related to things you've already done, hit me with those. And if you think of new stuff, maybe shoot me a message and we'll be ready for next time. All right. I'm going to kill the stream. Bye, bots.